Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick unboxing and first look at the Xbox One. Now this is the Day 1 edition of this console, which means you actually have Day 1 2013 printed right on the controller. And if you're wondering what all of this enthusiasm is about beyond the obvious, it's really to celebrate how far Microsoft has come in this industry. After all, I've been with them, like many of you out there, since the first gen Xbox. I also started out as a beta tester for Live, and I've stuck with them through the entire journey, and they really have changed the gaming landscape in a good way, in my opinion, for the most part. So now we've got their update 8 years later to the Xbox 360, and it is at $499.99, a full $100 more than the PS4 that I already unboxed, and that is a fantastic system as well. They're very similar in terms of specifications. I'm not going to get into comparing them today, but many people aren't pleased with the fact that they're being forced into the Kinect. In my opinion, this is all about Microsoft wanting to deliver the experience that they've always wanted to since Bill Gates first envisioned what Xbox would eventually become, which was the media center for the living room, handling everything entertainment, gaming, movies, anything you could think of. This was going to be the device to rule them all. And the Xbox One is really that vision, in my opinion, coming to fruition. Granted, PS4, despite having, again, very similar specifications, both consoles have a Jaguar AMD processor with an AMD GPU, although the GPU in the PS4 does have 50% more power. Of course, I'm not going to really get into how much of that is actually used, but that's the big argument right now in terms of value for the PS4. The Xbox One, though, is about that vision coming to fruition that Bill Gates had when the Xbox was born. So we've got the Kinect, which gives all sorts of automation, voice commands that we don't have with the PS4, and we have a gaming console which is really riding on that live experience that is vacant from PS4. In terms of what comes in this box, by the way, specifications, 8 gigs of RAM, just like the PS4, 500 gig hard drive. So they really are almost identical in terms of specifications, but in terms of the way they actually operate and the vision from each manufacturer in terms of what the experience delivers, in my opinion, is very, very different, even though they share many of the exact same games. In terms of how they'll play on them, that's another segment entirely. In terms of what comes in the box, you can see right up here, obviously the console itself. We get the Kinect sensor, which has been revised. It's significantly larger, but also significantly upgraded. 1080p capability, a much wider angle, redesigned Xbox wireless controller. You're also getting a wired headset for live capability. I believe they include a 14-day subscription. PS4 includes a 30-day, for those of you curious, out of the box, included with the console itself. Of course, wireless connectivity, like both consoles, an HDMI cable is included for your video out. And this console actually has pass-through capability, which I'll be talking about as I get it out of the box. And then that 500 gig hard drive. Of course, the 1-year applicable standard warranty. And in terms of other noteworthy things, I do see down here at the bottom the seal of the NFL. It's the official console of the NFL. So I'm not sure exactly what that equates to. I guess it just means we're going to see a lot of marketing now for Xbox One during games. But let me get this box open so you can finally see what the console looks like. And this is exciting. Flip this over. Because after all, it's been almost 10 years. It's roughly 8 since the last generation launched. And Sony did have a disadvantage there. Microsoft got to market first. And many would argue that was the big difference maker because the PS3 definitely had significantly more advanced hardware. But in terms of actually getting it to market, that always tends to be a make or break issue for just about any device, especially consumer electronics. But here we have the presentation. The box is finally open. And you can see we've got the Kinect sensor right there. I'm going to go ahead and lift up the marketing. Seems like a significantly larger amount of cardboard than the PS4 had. Not that I'm comparing unboxings. You can go ahead and watch it yourself. We've got what seems to be a nicer headset than what's included with the PS4. I'll say that right now. Definitely more substantial, but it is just a plastic headset, so not a lot to anticipate with this, but better than having nothing out of the box, which I know they were originally discussing doing. The actual control right down here for connecting to the controller, which gives you mute capability, also has been redesigned for those of you that, again, are longtime Xbox users. So a new design there. Go ahead and put that to the side. Some paperwork, the quick start guide, as well as little decal, Xbox 360, but now, of course, Xbox One iconic sticker, as well as, I believe, the subscription code, which I'm going to go ahead and put that aside. And let's get down to business. We've got the controller right here, which has been redesigned, but they haven't tried to reinvent it because, after all, many have credited the original 360 controller with being the best ever made. And so here we have just a redesign in terms of internalizing the battery. Again, you can see that Day 1 2013 printed right on the controller. So, if you're enthusiastic like myself, you've been rewarded, I guess. I don't know. Charging via what appears to be micro USB, much like the PS4. And in terms of the actual feel of the controller, I can tell you right now, it feels good. Not that the new DualShock is in any way bad, but both really compelling. This is a very nice controller. Whether or not it's a clear improvement, clearly up to each user individually, but in my opinion, just getting rid of the battery hump on the back is big, because long sessions often, for me at least, you get a little bit of rub going on there. So they clearly listen to consumer feedback. They have included some batteries for the controller, but again, internalized. We don't have that hump any longer. We've got our HDMI cable right there, which seems to have pretty decent length. Something also noteworthy here, because at least from to my understanding, the Kinect has a decent amount of length on its cable, something that if you're looking to wire it inside of a wall should be an important factor for you, something that the PS4 comes up short, not sure why. But here's one area where Microsoft didn't advance, but some users will not care, and that's the power brick. We still have a good old power brick. Yes, it's gotten smaller, but it still exists. The PS4, on the other hand, no power brick at all. So for whatever reason, Microsoft still using the power brick. If I had to guess, probably this is all about costs. After all, that's usually what things in this industry are about, or in any industry. And this generation, in this latest gen of console wars, really reflects that cost war as well. And that's because both of these really have the innards of a PC. As I mentioned before, that Jaguar processor, as I take out this whole insert, trying to get to the wiring, there it is. The Jaguar processor, complemented by 8 gigs of RAM, as well as 500 gig hard drive. They both have Blu-ray. Of course, that's yet another thing that Microsoft said they would never have, but it's finally been employed here in this console. Let me go ahead and get the Kinect actually finally out of here. Deconstructing the packaging as we speak. Throwing it aside, literally. You can see that the Kinect is definitely larger, as I mentioned before. It's gained some weight. It's gained some size. Trying to get the plastic off cleanly here. Piano gloss finish, high gloss, as you may have noticed. And there you have it, that new wide-angle camera, a little bit of branding. And it'll be interesting to see where I'm going to fit this, in terms of also getting something to actually keep the camera covered when it's not in use. A lot of ventilation here along the top. That's something that Microsoft really looked to rectify, I think, in the entire redesign of this console from the 360 generation. We all know about what the red ring brought to the table, and clearly that's something that I think they've looked to address here. Let me move some things around here, and let's finally get to the console itself. And the console really, again, controversial in many different ways, but the net result is that you've got two really good options, in my opinion, between this and the PS4, because even though they share almost all the same specifications, the approach is really very different. I mean, the Kinect being included here, some people will heartily welcome, as opposed to those who feel like they're being forced into actually purchasing it. I can tell you this console is significantly larger than the PS4, definitely much heavier. Let me go ahead and get the box out of the way, since we've literally cleared it out. And with that added weight, hopefully they've rectified ventilation, or at least redesigned it and taken all of the past hardware issues into account. I mean, that's something all manufacturers do. And as I get the package finally unwrapped, you'll see that two-tone finish that I mentioned earlier, which is pretty much what you saw with the packaging. We've got a matte finish on the right, piano high gloss finish on the left, some Xbox branding on the front end of the console. Again, more branding as well as your Blu-ray drive right there. Nothing on the bottom. A lot of ventilation. I mean, half of the top layer was ventilation. Here on the right side, we have ventilation. On the back of the unit, we've got our actual power supply connection, HDMI out, SPDIF, so that's optical out for digital output for your audio. You have an HDMI in. Now, this is part of where the experience changes, and I'll get to that in a moment. Two USB 3.0 ports, your Kinect port, that obviously is for hooking up the Kinect, an infrared blaster, IR out, as well as an Ethernet port. So that pretty much rounds out things. Of course, a Kensington lock there too, just in case you need it. And on the other side of the console, a lot more ventilation. I believe that is the power switch and yet another USB port. So really, this is just yet another computer, different design than the PS4, but also a different vision. And that's what I want to speak about in closing on this unboxing, because we've gone through everything that there is to pull out of this box. It has been deconstructed. And really, the approach is very different. You know, when I look at this console and I look at the PS4, they are very close in terms of specifications. As I mentioned before, the PS4 does have more horsepower in the GPU department. And on paper, it seems to be the better buy, also because it's $100 less. And that really does speak to a much larger market than necessarily the niche that Microsoft is pitching to with the Xbox One. But when you talk about the technology, the amount of R&D that Microsoft has poured into the Xbox One, the experience, the automation with Kinect, how far Kinect has come. In fact, I skipped the last generation of Kinect, intentionally waiting for this gen, where I knew that they would have some clear improvements. Some of the stuff I saw back at CES 2012 with FaceCake. I mean, these things are becoming real. You'll be trying on clothing. It'll be a point-of-sale device. It really will become everything for some consumers. So in many ways, you could argue that this really isn't necessarily a console first, but more of a jack of all trades that also happens to be a console. I know that may sound crazy, and that may not be what Microsoft wants to market it as, but in my opinion, that's clearly exactly what it is. I mean, it's got all the same hardware as the PS4, but the approach is completely different. Whether we're talking about, you know, the integration of the Kinect experience, or the fact that it really does allow you to use that HDMI input that I showed you before to basically take over your entire living room, your media consumption, wherever you set this up. And that's because, okay, first and foremost, the HDMI in is for pass-through. That means that if you have a cable box, this won't really be helpful to those of you who don't have cable, but if you have a cable box, you can feed that HDMI in or go through your receiver of choice, and essentially you can now use this not as a DVR, but as a complement to your guide. You can use voice commands. Microsoft has demoed all of this. I'm not sure that I will. And you can actually now, you know, use your voice as well as the Kinect is really driving this experience, of course, as the companion. That's why it's included and it's part of the vision. They don't want it broken up. But it's going to give you seamless access to your cable guide, as well as instantly accessing, you know, information of what's on. These are things that may seem like a gimmick at first, but I think they could, you know, very well change the way we access and enjoy media. So that's really the goal, always has been, with the Xbox vision, again, that at least Bill Gates pitched from the very start. And I think that the One really does embody that finally, because it does stream every service you could want. So whether you're trying to replace Apple TV, another console, or Google TV, the Xbox really does try to take on everybody. So it's not really just aiming at taking on PS4. It's looking to replace everything. And that's a tough task. And that is the vision of this latest gen. So while many will argue about the 720p gaming performance that's upconverted versus the higher res you get out of the PS4, or the gaming performance just being higher with the PS4, again, I will revert all of you, or not revert, but point you to the fact that this is a product about an experience and a vision that is more than just gaming. So certainly not for everyone, but I think that speaks to clearly defining what a consumer should expect from this. You know, you're not going to get something that's going to give you necessarily better gaming performance than the PS4, but you are going to get a significantly different overall environment. The UI will be prettier, no question about that. And Microsoft has really put a tremendous amount of work and R&D into this. And the fact that they're the largest software manufacturer in the world certainly does not help. Granted, launch titles are not strong for either console. I think both companies have come up with some pretty fantastic latest gen consoles for all of us to enjoy. So the Xbox One, in my opinion, definitely a very nice piece of hardware, has its drawbacks, but the overall package does seem to, once again, like in the history of Microsoft's existence in this business, push the envelope in a whole new direction. And with what they've developed with Live and the integration of Kinect and that pass-through with HDMI of integrating your cable and streaming and all of the media that you could possibly want to consume, they've taken the Xbox brand to another level. Whether or not it succeeds, only time will tell. Right now, pricing speaks to a soft opening with the little over 1 million units sold in the first 24 hours because they launched this in 13 different countries, whereas PS4, also selling 1 million units in 24 hours of launch, launched only in the US and Canada. So take that for what you will. I'll be comparing these down the road, but definitely excited to finally get the next generation Xbox in my hands. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.